I'm going to start with 3 steps to having a desire for life. Um, I spent most of my life desiring death, and I was born with a chemical imbalance. I've had multiple traumas throughout my life. I was a foster child. I was born to 2 alcoholics. I was abused by my older brother. The list goes on and on. And we'll make videos about all of that at some point, I'm sure. But 2 years ago, I had a double heart attack and I died. And so I had a chance to let go and have what I had spent my whole life wanting, which was death. My husband of 25 years, who I believe very strongly was my soulmate, died 6 weeks before my heart attacks. And I don't really have any family. I've got a younger brother, um, and my stepchild is an adult. My birth child, who I had to give up for adoption, is an adult. So when I had the heart attacks, I was given the choice in the state of death that I could stay here or I could go. Now, let me be clear about death, at least my experience of it. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. There was no family members that had died, and I've lost a lot of family, coming to meet me. There were no other beings in that moment. Now, I have communicated with those who have passed on. I have experience that I can't deny that involves people who are no longer here in a physical body. But in that moment, it was just me and that decision. And the most peaceful state I've ever been in. The doctors were trying to save me. There were doctors moving in and out of the room. I could hear things in the distance until I didn't anymore. I was able to maintain consciousness up until that moment. The my experience of death, was one of absolute peace. I have anxiety, I have OCD, I have major depressive disorder, I have a lot going on in my head. And it was all quiet. All the noise of the room was quiet. It was the most comfortable I'd ever been in my entire life. I felt like I was laying in the most comfortable feather bed I'd ever laid in, with the most comfortable pillows. There was no feeling of the mattress against my body. It was peace and comfort and an absence of anxiety and an absence of sound. It was really just the best nap I've ever had. And when asked if I wanted to stay or go, I knew in that moment, immediately, that everyone in my life who had ever been a part of my life would continue living their lives. They would continue moving forward, because I've been through death of family members, of loved ones, of friends. I know that it's awful. It's terrible. It's the most intense of all emotional pain to have somebody in your life that's just gone. But life keeps going. Even when we give up, life keeps going until it doesn't anymore. So the the knowledge that everyone was going to be okay without their dependence on me, without me being there to help them or fix their problems, wasn't sad at all. It was so comforting to know that the world would keep turning with or without me. And it was a point toward allowing myself to finally let go after a long life of trying to end it. But as soon as I realized that, I also realized there were things I wanted to do. I like to paint. I have paintings I want to finish. I have a younger brother that I enjoy spending time with. There are sunsets that I want to see. And so I chose to stay. I chose to stay with passion. I basically responded to this disembodied questioner with, I've got to stay. I've got things to do. I can't go yet. I'm not ready. And when I made that decision, I woke up in the ICU 3 days later. I had no idea that any time had passed. But it led me to my first realization about having a desire to live, a desire to set down leaving here. And that first realization is that I have a choice. I have a choice every moment of every day to do what makes me happy, or do what makes other people happy, or sacrifice myself, or make myself comforted, meet my own needs, meet other people's needs. Nothing at all. I could do nothing at all if I chose. And I know there's a lot of people who think that they can't make those kinds of decisions because they're in a marriage, or they have children to look after, or they're still living with their parents, or they are in an abusive situation. What I've discovered about that, and it's through a life of trauma that I've learned this, those things may be true about your environment. Those things were true about my environment. But we can't see the path out of the situation we're in if the situation that we're in is so stressful we can barely keep our heads above water. If our focus is on survival, then we can't see anything but survival. So the important part is to, the very first part is to know that there is a choice. There are different consequences for every choice we make, but there is a choice. And as somebody who tried to talk myself out of making this video, we can talk ourselves out of making any decision. And so it's what we want that makes us move in the direction that we need to go. And that can be overwhelming. The next realization that I had came from that state of peace and comfort. There was no sound. There was no vision. There was no breeze on my face. I couldn't feel the air conditioner running. I couldn't feel the sheets against my body. I couldn't feel the needle in my arm that the doctors had put in to try to get some kind of medicine in me. They stuck me a lot because my veins had collapsed. And there was nothing. Now that doesn't mean death is nothing. But what I came to realize is rather than death being nothing, death is existence. And the only way we can have experience is through our bodies. We need our eyes to see. We need our skin to touch. We need our tongue to taste. We need our ears to hear. And our nose to smell, whatever. We need that. And without it, we have existence. So the only path to experience is through our bodies, is through our meat sack. And so we don't stop existing just because we leave our bodies, but we do stop gathering experience. Our devices for input are no longer accessible. We can no longer record memories. We can no longer hug the people we love or punch the people we hate. Or, not that I condone that, but it's just an example. I definitely do not condone violence, but I know that we all struggle with frustrations at times. We can't cuddle with our favorite stuffed animal, or eat spicy food, or eat ice cream, or for those of you who are lactose intolerant, whatever it is you like the flavor of. We can't have the pain or the pleasure. And that's a reason to want to choose differently, which takes me back to one, and that is what number 2 is about, is the second step to having a desire for life is to try to recognize that being alive means having the means to process our experience, to filter our existence into something comprehensible. And that's all we've got when we're here, even if our experience is uncomfortable or painful. It's an experience that we have the honor of experiencing. So I'm going to use the word experience too many times in a row here, but I'm not going to go back and censor myself, and I'm not going to write this all down and then read it. I can't. I want to try to be more spontaneous than that, because that is outside of my comfort zone. The third thing that I feel is really important when I was coming to terms with not seeking the sweet release of death anymore was that death is inevitable. So I didn't die when I had the heart attack, but I'm going to die eventually. And that's everybody. Everybody who's alive is going to die eventually. Everybody who's ever lived has either died or will die. And everyone who will live will eventually die. So if we have a chance to change what our living is like, then that is something other than death. Death is a thing, a single state of existence. But life is everything. Life is all the existences. Life is experience. Life is a myriad of things. It's multitudinal. It's multifaceted. It's a bunch of stuff. And death is just death. And we call it death because we are alive. But it's really just the purest form of existence. That pure in this case isn't necessarily positive or negative. It's just not the same as life. It's binary. It's on or off. You're alive or not. And if you're alive, even if you have locked-in syndrome, even if you're in a coma, being alive offers that experience. Passage of time is an experience, not passing time. Say you're in a coma and you fall asleep, and then 10 years later you wake up and you're like, I just fell asleep yesterday, and you find out you're 10 years older. That's still an experience that you would not have the opportunity to have if instead of falling into a coma you died. It just, you don't come back from that. I mean, unless you do. Let's not get into that part of it at this point. But it's you've got a very narrow window of time if you die in order to not stay dead. And that window closes and it's over. And you don't get to have this experience anymore. Sure, if we're reincarnated, you might get to have experiences again. But so few people remember their past lives in so little detail. And those who do still don't know, like, every day. Like, if they say, okay, I remember I was a pharaoh in Egypt. Great. What did you have for lunch on your 32nd birthday as a pharaoh in Egypt? You don't get to know those experiences once you've transitioned into the next phase. So that, I believe, goes into the Akashic records, but that's another subject too. So the three things I think that are really powerful motivators to wanting to live life as opposed to laying down and giving up on life and calling it quits before whatever the natural timing of things would have it be. The first one is that you do have a choice. And if you're struggling with that choice, if you don't see choices in your environment, if you don't know how to change what's happening in a way that can make it any more tolerable or any less stressful or any more pointed in the direction of happiness as opposed to merely survival, then reach out and, I mean, message me. I there's lots of people who might be able to offer a perspective other than the one that you're in. But definitely reach out. And then, because we can't always see all the paths that we have available to us. So you can choose differently if the life that you're in makes you feel like it's not worth living. The second thing is that our meat brain is the only path to experience. Experience is not the same as existence. And we can experience our existence in this body, but outside of this body we can only exist. We don't get to experience that the same way with, our sensory organs. And then the third thing that I want to leave you with that will help you, I hope will help you recognize that life can be desired, that life can be something worth having, is that death is inevitable. We're all going to die at some point. So rushing to that, you'll miss so much. And life can change, but death cannot change. So this is my first attempt at trying to get myself out there. So I hope that I've struck some positive notes with anyone who might have been listening, and I hope that this will be good food for thought. And thank you for spending time with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, or at least it's survivable.